Our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bond.
You're listening to Across the Pond on the Paranormal UK Radio Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Across the Pond. I am here with Liam. I go by Stijn Fox. And for today, this is our first dual episode. Was supposed to be the three of us, but, you know, things happen. Life happens.
Mechanical issues happen, which is Andy's case.
Always when you least want them, and always on times that are, you know, the least convenient. It's like, oh, I have a podcast recording to do. The car is gonna break down. Ah, fuck. Of course it is.
Clearly, Andy had something important to say.
Yeah, yeah, and you know the powers that be are trying to prevent him from, you know, from telling his story, from telling his side of things. That's why they, you know, remotely broke down his car. Well, that should set the tone.
Yeah, definitely.
So, topic of today, which we have been discussing already in private a bit, and like a good almost hour before we even started recording. Also, you know, just kind of get to know each other, of course, since we are both new additions to Across the Pond. Yeah, gonna talk about, you know, a very hot topic. Seems to be getting hotter. I don't know.
It's a daily almost monthly? At the moment.
Daily even.
Yeah, you're probably right. Realistically, I think maybe I'm overshooting things a little bit. Yeah, probably, maybe at a weekly basis, things are progressing.
Yeah.
In this arena.
Well, aliens and UAPs or UFOs or what is it? Unidentified. I mean, is that still like UAP?
Yeah, UAP is so the new moniker they've attached to it.
Yeah.
So a few years ago, I think that they had a big issue with people calling them UFOs because it's too much of a buzzword in the sci-fi community, and it's almost not in touch with the realms of reality. So I think they did a rewording of it just to sort of lend some more credibility to it. So they've gone with UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon.
Yeah, giving it a shiny new coat.
Seems to have done the trick, though.
Yeah, it does. And they're not just aerial, like they seem to like come out of the water.
Absolutely,
as well, like underwater basis.
Yeah, and I think it's a good starting point. I think for those who are listening and tuning in that may not have their finger on the pulse of this topic, it's I think it's important to set the scene on just how relevant this topic is at the minute. This isn't, you know, like yesteryear where the tinfoil hat brigade would come out and start talking about UFOs and everybody else would laugh at them. You know, this has really picked up momentum massively, especially in the last 8 years or so, which we touched on earlier with the New York Times releasing those leaked videos from the Pentagon. And that's when sort of things really started hotting up in the mainstream as it possibly could be. Maybe not on the mainstream media, but there are you know, news outlets and journalists on the fringe of mainstream that are talking about this, and there are very important people also joining in with the conversation. And I think, like I said at the beginning of this statement, is paragraph, should I say, is to really set the scene that this isn't just, you know, crazy talk anymore. This is real talk that is happening daily between some of the most influential people on this planet. This is a very, very real subject. And it's very serious, and it needs to be taken seriously.
Yeah, I mean, if, you know, all the top people from the world's governments are, you know, taking it seriously, and especially from a military standpoint, taking it as a credible threat, even.
Absolutely.
Which is something, you know, that we could get into, because there has been at least one project dedicated to, alien threats or, threats from outside of our planet, at least. But yeah, if the military is taking it seriously, if the government is taking it seriously from just face value, whether you believe those are credible people or not, they are very high up. They do, they're very credible people. They have the papers, they have the studies, they have the credentials. So if they're taking it seriously,
sure. They've got the receipts.
Maybe we should start taking it seriously as well, and not just as something that, as you put so eloquently, the tinfoil hat brigade can't stop talking about.
Well, the reality of the situation is everybody on this planet is taking it seriously, apart from the general public. Now, why is that? That's the question. Why is it the public who are not taking it seriously, yet everybody else is? All the men in suits, they're taking this very seriously. And now you can argue that there is a cloak of, misleading information over the years, and I think there's blatantly been a massive effort to cover this whole thing up. We're in 2025, and there's still people walking around in this world that don't know about this topic. So it's clear that this has been a massive cover-up. Possibly one of the greatest scams in human history, really. It really is that serious.
It is, and we're not talking about little green man from Mars, because I think the general, or let's say less educated, don't want to say uneducated, but less educated public, maybe that is the view that they're still having. Maybe that's the stereotype that they're still thinking of, very much formed by popular media.
Well, there's peace.
Hollywood has had
a
major role in, how we perceive things, including aliens.
Absolutely, and there is peace in ignorance. It's a lot easier to deny the existence of something rather than deal with the reality of the situation and what that could potentially mean for your own little personal piece of the world that you live in. It's a lot easier. It's as we, the saying is, isn't it? The red pill or the blue pill? Are you awake or unawake? That's the difference between the people walking around out there. I've just bothered to look into it and really take it seriously and examine the data. And that's the important thing, that none of these sort of claims are made based on hearsay. There is data. There is tangible data right there to be seen and found that backs up the claims made by various officials over the years that have categorically stated and bet their livelihood on the fact that this is a very real phenomenon. And I don't want to say threat, because I don't believe it to be a threat. And anybody that's had any experience with the phenomena has already said, and they categorically stated many a times, that there is no threat here to be had. This is from what people have said, majoritively it's a peaceful, experience, whatever it may be, a loving experience. There's a lot of emotions, but for the most part positive, based around any sort of contact with ETs and UAPs, and that seems to be the case over the years. So I'd say that before we move into it in real depth, is that there's no fear, as far as I'm aware and concerned, to be had on the topic. It's more one of curiosity and,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you could even kind of, since I am more of a spiritual thinker, occult-minded individual, you could kind of attach to that the talk about star seeds, which is also kind of a fact. Human DNA is not native to our planet, which looking at the grand scheme of things might explain a lot. It might also explain how we go around taking care, or really not taking care of our planet, but just human DNA itself has come from outer space somewhere at a certain point in time. When that was or how that came to be is, is still up for discussion.
Yeah.
Think of that whatever you want. I'm sure there are many different sources who will tell you many different things about it, but the fact is, we are not from this planet.
Well, there's a lot of theories on it, isn't there? And there's a lot of, we talked about one just previously, the Lacerta files, we mentioned it. Now, in that particular, and if you are interested, you can YouTube it. Area 52 is a really good source to go to. It did an in-depth reading of the four-part Lacerta files. It covers it in detail. Now, the premise of the interview was a Swedish gentleman interviewed a reptilian species of ET. Well, I say ET, it's not actually, it's an earthling. But we don't want to go too crazy. What I don't want to do here is just go straight in and frighten everybody off that maybe dipping the toe into the world of UAPs and start talking about reptilians and all sorts of crazy things. There are theories, and again, this is one of those things, and I mentioned it before, and again, if you're new to this, your beginning of your journey potentially could start now. And as you move through the topics and the subjects and you hear about this and you learn about that, it becomes very evident that there is a grand picture. And you start connecting some of these dots and things start to make sense. And this particular story will match up with this one and this, and before you know it, you've got this picture and you see the bigger picture. You start to see the puzzle coming together. And the Lacerta files is one of them. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of crazy stuff within the Lacerta files that you think, I don't know, that seems a bit far-fetched. But then you hear it against and compare it against another story or, another theory, and it marries up, and you think, it's too coincidence. There's way too many coincidences throughout this entire topic for it not to be real. So let's get that off the table straight away. If you sat there thinking this isn't real, I can tell you now it is. It's real. It's very real. So let's get that out there straight away. This is real. And the way that we unpack it is very careful. We've got to be careful in the way that we unpack it, should I say, because if you're listening for the first time and we go in with something really heavy straight away, it might switch you off. I started very easy. I mean, you can speak for yourself, but my introduction to this was very simple. Joe Rogan. He was just interviewing one of the US Air Force pilots that was involved with the Tic Tac phenomena. And again, if you don't know what that is, by all means, YouTube it. You'll see it, the Tic Tac UAP phenomena. And Ryan Graves was the pilot. Not Ryan Graves. Fravor. David Fravor was the pilot that saw the Tic Tac and filmed it on his instruments within his jet. That's how I was introduced to this. I was just very interested in what he had to say. I couldn't believe it at first, much maybe the same as you. I was always one of those who thought there's got to be ETs out there, aliens out there. There's no way I can be ignorant enough to sit here and think we're the only intelligent species in the universe, I mean,
there are so many different theories even about that, and the one that I always go to, the one that I always when this conversation comes up with, normal people, for as far as I know, normal people, it's like there are so many other planets out there in, just the known universe, just the part of, everything that we have mapped, that we know to exist. There are so many planets, and there are we're also finding more and more planets who are in the so-called Goldilocks zone with, their star, with their own sun, taking Earth as a base measurement, of course. So, even in the Goldilocks zone, which, according to, earthly physics, should be a high probability of some sort of life out there, or a life form, because if it could happen on Earth, then other planets who are very similar to Earth, maybe a bit bigger, maybe a bit smaller, but in the around the same orbit, why can it happen there? That's of course the first thing that you're going to look for. We have found quite some and more each year, each couple years. And there are so many other planets, there are so many other stars, so many other suns. It seems even mathematically impossible that our planet is the only one out there with life. And I mean life in the, most broad spectrum that you can imagine. Like even bacterial life is still life. I don't necessarily mean that there are, another form of humans walking around or some other form of, bipedal creatures, intelligent life. Maybe that's out there as well.
Yeah. I mean, it depends what your thoughts are on the way that intelligent life evolves. Because in nature, one thing we do know is that life always takes, and this is just physics, but life and physics, biology, everything always takes the route of least resistance. Everything.
Yeah.
That's evolution, life, whatever. You drop something, it falls straight down. It's the way that it is. The laws of physics, how we understand them. Now, is there an argument to suggest, possibly, that it doesn't matter where you are in the universe, if you are in a habitable zone and there is enough time and there's enough resources, life will evolve in the same way everywhere? I.e., having hands, having eyes, having the senses, is that the optimum way for a biological being to evolve, i.e. a humanoid? Is it rational to say that out there, life always takes the same path, i.e. 2 eyes, mouth, the senses, the hands to make and grasp and, make our own environment our own, essentially? Who knows? I don't know.
I would like to think that we are unique. But even if you just look at life on Earth, if you look at birds, bats, certain water mammals, like dolphins, whales, they have just very large fingers, really. Especially with bats, for example, what you think are their wings or their hands, but with incredibly long fingers and very thin, flexible skin within them. So that the form is there. There seems to be some sort of a let's call it the blueprint from where everything has evolved. Is it possible that on some other planet, in some other galaxy, in some other solar system, the same thing happened?
The interesting thing about life for me on this planet, and our particular little rock floating through the cosmos, is that we're the only species, I suppose, unless you take monkeys and apes into consideration, but we're the only species that has taken the evolutionary track that we have, that has allowed us to be able to manipulate our outside and worldly environment with our hands and our thoughts, i.e. to be able to build, construct, and utilize the laws of physics to our will, essentially. Why is there no other species on this planet that has done that? And that leads me on to the Lacerta thing. Has our evolution been sped up? Has somebody, an intelligent form out there, manipulated our genes? Why are we the only one who can, perceive the world in the way that we do?
I do believe that there are certain primate species. I would have to look up the exact details on this, but I do believe that there are certain primate species on our planet who are now using very rudimentary stone tools.
But why are we so far ahead of them? Because we're not just an evolutionary leap, we're in another realm. We're way ahead. Why?
Yeah, I mean,
why did we, the why did we, as in the human Homo sapiens, why did we take that jump and say the orangutans didn't or the chimps didn't? Why? What's so special about us? Which leads me on to the Lacerta thing, and that is one of the dots that you connect from the Lacerta files. And the suggestion is from Lacerta files is there was an ET civilization that came to Earth and they manipulated our genes in order to speed our evolution up, which would then aid them in what they were trying to do, i.e. mine resources and precious metals from the planet that we live on.
Still
They essentially manipulated our
there.
genes to make us their worker bees. Yeah.
Gonna go again.
So the question that I left there was, has our genes been manipulated by another species in order to make us more efficient at doing their will, i.e. mining resources for them, which is something that is suggested. That would explain
Well,
why
if
we're so
they-
far ahead evolutionary than every other species on Earth.
It could, but like, don't you think if they had the means, if they had the technology to do that, that they would have the technology to do it themselves?
Well,
You know,
this
like,
is
why
again.
go through all the trouble to, grab a, random primate species or, very early hominid species and inject them with, whatever to, or manipulate their DNA in such a way that they have become, incredibly advanced. If you can do that, if you can go through all that trouble, why not just mine it yourself? If you have the tools for genetic manipulation, you have basic mining tools or the capability to make basic mining tools.
Well, the thing is, today, if you take away everything that's happened over the last God knows how many thousands of years, and you take today's civilization, if ETs come down now and they tell us, or they command us, to do what they did years ago, so build a pyramid, for instance. If you come down now and you get humans to build you a pyramid, i.e. like the ones in Giza, would it be the same? Because there's a lot of argument that even archaeologists today back it up, that we as humans today with our technology couldn't do what they have done. Now, when you look back at some of the cave paintings and... Go on.
No, I have a bit of a explanation for that. We're gonna have to go more into the spiritual realm.
Okay, let's do it.
A lot of spiritual texts, a lot of spiritual beliefs. Most well known being the Bible says that man has fallen into matter. That we weren't always this dense, if you will. We were beings, divine beings of pure love and light. That is, if you go according to more biblical scriptures, more theosophical way of thinking. Blavatsky, Steiner, those people. So if we have fallen into matter, you could argue that the rest of the world of our planet as we know it, there is very dense. Not always on the same level of density as we are, but let's say the entirety of the Earth as a living being has fallen into matter. That could mean that those stones, those multiple 100,000 tons stones, were a lot less dense, a lot lighter than they are now. And it is a given fact that we are not at our technological peak. We have peaked multiple times, but in this in this round, in this go around, we're definitely not at our technological peak. So that is, it's a thought that I had. It is kind of backed up by theosophy. It is a little bit backed up by the Bible, and I want to preface, the Bible are not literal texts. They don't tell you literally what happened. The Bible is allegorical, it's astronomical, it's astrology, it's occult, it's mysticism, it's pretty much anything but literal. So falling into matter, falling into density, it would make sense that in order for us to still survive on this earth, either we would have to be placed on a denser planet, kind of also going back into the notion that our DNA is not from here. If we come from the Garden of Eden, This most definitely is not the Garden of Eden. I can tell you that much. You know, you're an Englishman. I'm a Dutchman. This is far from the fucking Garden of Eden.
If it has, it's been chopped down
Oh boy, has it!
a long time ago.
So, you know, this is very much a dense planet, and I think with you know, the previous civilizations, there have been previous civilizations that were way more advanced, technologically advanced, spiritually advanced than we are now. So with, you know, less dense materials, I am absolutely sure it is possible, or even it has to be on a very large scale, but, you know, through the power of cymatics, sound vibrations, you can levitate objects, even rocks, you know, heavier rocks, through vibrations, sound vibrations. There are experiments done. There is a very well-known video floating around the internet of I believe it's a Russian scientist at a kind of an expo who's making 3 types of rock float. You know, one you know, heavier than the other, and he's doing it through the use of cymatics, the use of sound, the use of vibration. So I do believe that we have built the pyramids, but yeah, it's true, we would absolutely not be capable of doing that now. Absolutely. It's no way. It's not going to happen.
No, I agree. And that seems to be the general consensus from the scientific community, is that we couldn't do that now. Now, I don't know if anybody's been keeping an eye on it, but recently there's been a lot of interest in the pyramids in Egypt, a potential structure they found underneath. But one of the things that's interesting, and I'm just bringing this up because you mentioned it, we were talking about sound frequencies to move heavy objects. So the pyramid itself, obviously, them stones that make up the pyramid vary in size, but they're huge, right? They're huge and essentially unliftable by today's standards.
Yeah.
Now, what they've got, or what they've seen on on paintings within inside, you know, hieroglyphs within the pyramids in certain chambers, is that they've found depictions of the workers at the time moving these rocks and maneuvering them into position. And what they've seen on some of the pictures of the rocks themselves is a serpent, and a serpent depicts electricity from way back then. So there is an idea, and this sort of goes hand in hand with potentially what they've discovered, i.e. a generator, free energy generator, that is part of the pyramid structure itself. I could imagine that we should watch this space a little further just to discover, you know, and see what's really going on there. I imagine there's going to be some peer reviews, you know, peer-to-peer reviews on the paper that's been released to confirm it. And depending on who the person is or who the people are doing those peer-to-peer reviews, and this is where it becomes a grey area for me, and we'll go into that in a second, but we're talking about who is this information going to? Who is controlling it? i.e. who's confirming or denying the fact that this is real, and what's the legitimacy of their claim on that, and who has got to benefit from that? This is where the corruption thing comes in. That's blatantly been at play over the years. You know, money, follow the money. You know, who sets to profit from this information? Which is why I'm very dubious when it comes to who's doing the information investigation here. You know what I mean? And are they credible? And do they want this information released? So, but anyway, back to the point of there's a serpent on the rock which depicts electricity, which goes hand in hand with potentially what they've discovered underneath it, with being a free energy, essentially a device that creates energy, which would enable them to then move these things or whatever else is that they're doing. And it does explain a lot. You know, this is just another one of those dots. Does it, if it does turn out to be some kind of energy generator? I mean, obviously that throws the whole world into chaos, essentially, because everything we've known and believed comes crashing down around us. And I think, and I mentioned this morning, if this is the case, and it does turn out to be true, and that there is this free energy generator underneath within the pyramids, then this could be their way, or the establishment of the world's way of breaking the idea of a soft disclosure. Because let's imagine for a second, if you've been covering up this secret for potentially hundreds of years, keeping it from the public eye. If you, or if President Trump or any other elected official of the world comes out and stands behind a lectern and then says to the world, yes, all these years, it's true, ETs, they exist, they're here. What comes next? A torrid, masses of questions. And those questions aren't necessarily going to be good questions. There's going to be people who are going to be held to account for why this has been a secret, why it's been kept a secret, what reasons it's been a secret, and how much it's cost to keep this a secret. Because there's criminal activity here. And again, this is something that we'll no doubt cover in a later topic if we dig into the bones of it. Now,
so basically, will it be Men in Black or will it be Mars attacks?
Men in Black type situations. From what I've gathered over looking into the various encounters, it seems to be that there are a group of Men in Black that seem to follow these encounters around and making sure people stay quiet. Now, the point I was making regarding the pyramids is, as a soft disclosure, this alleviates the need for people to answer questions. If there is a new discovery, and that new discovery then leads to the information being released that there are ETs and they were, responsible for helping with the pyramids and providing humans with technology that assisted them in these previous civilizations, that then takes the heat off a lot of officials in the world that have been covering this up. Because essentially they can ignore everything that's happened previously and say, oh, we found it, it's a discovery. And because the discovery could be that groundbreaking, for the average Joe, not like us, who's been keeping the finger on the pulse of the topic, that's very easy to say, oh, brilliant, they are real, it's real, and you forget about all the rest of the stuff, the cover-ups, the lies, the deceit, you forget about all of that. This could be a very, very good way for the governments of the world to break disclosure without getting their hands dirty, so to speak. So this is why I'm really watching this topic with curiosity going forward and what it means and how they're going to release this information.
Yeah.
Because there's two ways it could go. They could deny everything and say there isn't an energy generator underneath and it's all rubbish. The lead scanner was wrong, or it could be a soft disclosure. You don't know, but it'll be interesting to see how it develops.
Basically, what you are describing is Project Bluebeam, but without the threat of violence.
Well, this is the thing. We don't know. And anybody, I think, with the finger on the pulse of this topic, it's up to date. I think there's just so much confusion because we don't know what the hell's going on. The Project Bluebeam thing, this potential pyramid situation, there's a lot of weird things happening, moving parts and, official documents and projects, and nobody seems to have a clue what the hell's happening.
And this has been going on for, several hundreds of years. I briefly mentioned Blavatsky, Theosophy, that is late 1800s, I believe, or early 1800s. Crowley with Lamb, the supposed entity that he made contact with, who very much, if you look at the drawings that have been made based on the description given by Crowley, very much looks like what we recognize as a gray alien. So it's been going on for so incredibly long, and you at the beginning, like you mentioned, the 40s. Let's talk about the 40s, the 1940s, and the guy with the funny mustache.
Yeah, everybody knows that guy.
Yeah, he and his cabinet, and most of all, even his second in command, was obsessed with the occult, was obsessed with the theories of Atlantis, of Lemuria, of civilizations gone by. Even created I want to say kind of secret society in the Annenerbe, who were all about the vril, about the life force. Those women, they weren't allowed to cut their hair, for example, because your hair, they are like the antennas through which you connect with the divine, or you get you connect divine messages. Which has its roots in so many other beliefs as well. I believe that the Native Americans believe that it is in the the biblical story of Samson, who, got his hair cut and lost all of his power.
Well, one of the things that's, again, this is just about the whole journey we're on here is about connecting dots, as I mentioned earlier. And just listening to something you said there, it provides another dot to connect. And the reason for that is there's something else, and I would keep referring to it, I probably should move away, but it goes back to the Lacerta files, and there was something in there that was said, that something similar that you just said there, and it connects the dots. I'm just trying to think what it was now. What was we saying then? I'm sorry. I just had it in my head, the pathway. Go back over that. So we went back.
Atlantis.
That's it, Atlantis. So what was said in the Lacerta files, and this was something that really made my ears prick up. And the Lacerta, so this is the reptilian, this earthling, previous Earth species that's been around longer than us on the planet, said that we know a fraction more today than we did 500 years ago about physics and, the universe, as it were. We know a fraction more.
Yeah.
So when you think about the exponential leaps that we've taken as a human race in the last 500 years with the Industrial Revolution, medicine, wars, technology just evolving the way that it has. It's mind-blowing.
Enlightenment era onwards.
To say that 500 years ago and now we know barely any different, considering how much we've learned in the last 500 years, is mind-blowing. And I believe that. I do believe that. I think there's laws of physics out there that we just don't understand. And then what happens here on our planet is unique, essentially, to us, based on our universe and the elements around us. I think things are different out there. There are planets that rain diamonds, for instance, and the physics, there's rain that goes up. There's different laws of physics in different places. What we know about our world is what we know about our world. But we're saying about civilizations that have died out throughout the millennia, and you can see evidence of it. The Atlanteans and, things, people think that's crazy. It's not. It's really not. You go around, you look at the place in Turkey, I can't remember the name of it now, but they found the city buried underground. They suggest there is a city underneath the Sphinx.
Yeah.
There's pyramids under the sea. How did they get there?
Even closer to home, between our countries, between the Netherlands and the UK, there was Doggerland.
The Doggerland, exactly, the North Sea before it went underwater. Who lived there?
Yeah.
What is there? have we looked? And when we say, 90% of the world's oceans are undiscovered, I can tell you now, there's things down there from previous civilizations. There are. Antarctica's another thing. I can't remember the name of it, but there's a map, isn't there? It was pre-Christopher Columbus, and Antarctica was a landmass.
Yeah. I mean, there is evidence found like way, way deep into the ice, like kilometers deep into the ice of vegetation.
This thing's covered up on Google World, Google Earth. Why are they covering these things up? There's a pyramid there in Antarctica that thawed, and you could see it. Suddenly there was a blurry area over that area on Google Maps. Why? Do you know why? And there's a no-fly zone. And you can't just go there. We couldn't just raise our own money and just go to Antarctica and walk around willy-nilly. There are government rules in places, whoever, is responsible for that area of the world who says, well, it's too dangerous, you can't go there. Is that the case? Or we're not getting told the full picture?
Like, we can go there, but there are indeed a lot of, strict rules and regulations.
It's not because of the cold. Don't tell me it's because of the cold. Do you know what I mean?
No,
you can't...
it's even lately there's this whole thing about a group of flat earthers who went to the South Pole to try and debunk the 24-hour sun that happens, I believe, like during this time of year or whenever that is. On the southern equator, they actually managed to find proof of the 24-hour sun. They saw the 24-hour sun with their own eyes, debunking the whole flat Earth model. And still, there are, people
it's incredible,
like,
right?
This it's fake. They're government shills and whatever. No, it was literally some dude with his own money took two of the more let's say, high-profile flat Earth content creators with him and said, "Hey, let's go see for ourselves." So yeah, it is possible, but it's very hard to get there. But it's not. It has been the notion, especially in the conspiracy realms, that you can't go to Antarctica because I don't know, like you'll be shut down, or like the whole world government will come with their army and try to fucking stop you. No, you can't go to Antarctica. It's just there are research stations there. There's a lot of sensitive equipment there, and theories of more shadier things as well. Going back to the funny mustache. He's
well, they had a team, didn't they, in Antarctica, the Nazis? But while we're on the subject of Antarctica, let me tell you something. I've heard obviously stories and tales along this rabbit hole journey of Antarctica. But one thing that is tangible, and you can't argue with this, you can have your theories about no-fly zones and green zones within Antarctica of lush life and something that we may never know without going there and physically seeing. But one thing that is true, and this is tangible evidence, NASA they carried out some experiments in Antarctica because there were some strange things going on. And they did this thing called Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna. But basically, they detected unusual neutrino behavior. So we're talking at the atomic level, neutrons, right? And what they did is they discovered that particles moved backwards in time at a certain area within the Antarctic. Moved backwards in time. So they essentially manipulated time-space, these particles. And there's something interesting about that.
That goes against the
laws of physics.
Yeah, against everything.
Exactly. So let me read this to you. This is from NASA. NASA's Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna experiment detected unusual neutrino behavior, which some scientists interpreted as particles moving backwards in time. This anomaly led to speculations about parallel universes or alternative realities. Experts caution, obviously, that there's no concrete evidence to support these claims, which is something they've obviously got to say before there's any peer reviews. But the scientific community remains skeptical, emphasizing the need for rigorous analysis. Obviously, that goes without saying on any of this stuff because, we're talking about Earth, human history-altering information that's coming to light. Essentially, we're saying that particles are moving backwards in time. Does that mean that humans, under the right circumstances in that area, would also essentially become ageless? Do you know what I mean? There's more to be. There's more to be told on this topic. Well, there's more to be told. But what we do know is, and this is fact. This isn't me fabricating it. NASA have done the experiment. They've found that neutrino particles age backwards. Or they move backwards in time. You do with that information what you will. But if you want to go down a rabbit hole on Antarctica, the North Pole, and portals around the world that connect various places on Earth, Antarctica falls into that category.
Stargates.
Exactly, Stargates.
Yeah.
Egypt being one of them. The Sphinx is a very, very famous one.
I mean, it's also being said that, that was one of the reasons why the U.S. invaded Afghanistan or Iraq. I believe Iraq, because that is the, what we're told is the location of ancient Mesopotamia. So, from historical, religious, any kind of perspective, very, very interesting area. And I mean, Saddam, say whatever you want about his cruelty, he wasn't stupid. He had stuff. He had certain things.
Is that why the coalition forces went in under the guise of UN nuclear inspectors? Everybody knew there was no nuclear weapons in Iraq. I've been in the army 20 years. I can tell you now, there was no nuclear weapons in Iraq. The UN went in to look for that, and then suddenly we're at war. Why? Really?
Yeah,
we're talking about Iraq here,
It apparently also had to do with 9/11, which I believe no Iraqi or just a few Iraqi citizens were a part of, and even if they were backed by Saudi money.
Yeah,
I
well,
believe.
no, Iranian. Iran is essentially the fuel for most of these terror groups. Al Qaeda being
Yeah.
one of them, which took responsibility for 9/11. But that was
And-
Afghanistan predominantly, which is why we went into Afghanistan. Apparently, we
Yeah,
went into Iraq
so-
to
but it-
take nuclear weapons away.
Yeah, WMDs, which later was admitted, like, there are none.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly. But why are we
we're
still
gonna
here
s-
5 years later?
Yeah, because of
the hell?
Yeah, that's my cat.
I wondered what that was.
No, it's my cat. Like every time I record, whether it's solo or on my show or here
Impeccable
on-
timing.
across the pond, he always has to make himself known. On my own show, he's lovingly dubbed my kitty co-host.
Yeah, I was going to say, we've got a fourth co-host, a furry little co-host.
Yeah, so I guess it is still the three of us at the moment, just not the one we thought it was going to be. Yeah, no, but it's the answer to that is civil unrest. Well, yeah, obviously, you're basically invaded by a foreign country. They tear your shit up, and then they're telling you like, oh, we're gonna stay a little longer because you guys seem to be really angry, so like you're gonna need to calm down first, okay? That's gonna help. It's like you slapping me in the face and telling me like, hey, ho, don't get angry now, and I'm gonna stay here right in front of you until you're not angry anymore. I'm gonna like stop being angry if you pack your shit and leave. But and another very popular theory, one that I always like to say, because we know there were in Iraq, Afghanistan, like that area, just so many poppy fields.
Oh, yeah.
So, and plenty of crude oil, of course, in that area too. So a lot of gold. There are plenty of pictures with I believe mostly U.S. soldiers with just sitting on heaps and heaps of gold.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I always say that they were fighting for God, standing for gold, oil, drugs.
I can pretty much guarantee that, yeah. It's interesting, really, because with the gold situation, is that from a lot of stories and theories and things that you move through, precious metals is a huge resource for ETs. Gold being one of them, i.e., the precious metal, apparently.
Yeah.
It's just sparse throughout the universe. There's not a lot of gold from what we've seen. So gold, obviously, it's a very rare commodity within the universe. There are ways of picking it up and seeing it in the way that it reacts under light. So we can see within the universe itself where the gold is or where some gold is. Obviously, it's huge, but it's not a common element. Which it does back up the fact that, again, on the Lacerta files, I'm coming back to it again, is the genetic manipulation of our genes in order to mine that stuff. It's not within the realms of, not being real, not a reality. And the way that we cover gold on this planet, it's like inherent. Children, they don't know the value of something, but they're attracted to gold. We're all attracted to gold as an element, as a precious metal. Why? Why has that been installed into us? Same with diamonds. Precious metals are something that we're just attracted to, but why?
Diamonds
Money
aren't
thing,
even
right?
Precious. Diamonds aren't rare. Diamonds are pretty
Well, yeah.
common, actually.
Commonplace.
The South African De Beer family who brought on the notion that they are so incredibly rare and so incredibly valuable because of it, and make themselves very rich. And gold, like there is a book series that I have read as a kid, kind of also kind of having to do with alternate universes. So yeah, like I was doomed from kid on, because I was already reading those books. But they make a good point, like in the, let's say, alternate universe of those book series, the Stravaganza series, very good books. gold is worthless because once gold, becomes dirty, starts to spot, you can't work it anymore. Silver, on the other hand, you can always polish. Whenever silver gets, a little dirty, a little, is kind of losing its glimmer, its shimmer, you can polish it, and it's, like new again. But still, gold is what we're going for, and maybe there's an astrological link to be made. Gold reminding us of the sun, and the sun is what gives us life. It gives us warmth. It makes sure that our crops grow. It makes sure that we have plenty of vitamin D. Although a Brit and a Dutchman, vitamin D, we have to supplement it.
But one of the things about gold you mentioned that it gets dirty and stuff, but it's also, and this is something that I suppose needs recognition, it's a conductor. And as far as the conductors are concerned, it's very, very efficient. It's not a superconductor like copper, but it's an incredibly good conductor.
It is definitely one of the best. It is in most of your computers.
Exactly.
Most of your electronics, you'll find some scrap of gold. I'm talking milligrams, but still, because it is such a good conductor indeed.
Which is, again, does that lend some kind of credibility to why it's around so much of these vast spaces that are linked with, that side of our ethos on ETs and aliens and other dimensions and these hotspots, these portals. There seems to be gold and what's the word I'm looking for? Where they leave what's the word? It's not not like a gift, but it's like a homage to whoever the sky people, whoever are responsible for this technology. There's offerings to the gods, as it were.
The gods are, they're different in my opinion. I don't like the notion that
No, that's just me maybe being clumsy with my wording.
No, but I get it. Offerings, and a lot of statues of just these weird beings, but all holding some sort of a handbag or carry-on thing. A lot of engravings in South America, in the Mayan temples of people who look like they're sitting in some sort of a vehicle pointed upwards, maybe suggesting that they are going there. And don't come with the oh no, that's just, it was easier that way. No, because they're there's a lot of things that's going sideways as well. It is very intentionally done like that. It's another thing that I very much dislike. Oh, they didn't know what they were doing.
They
Hell
did.
Yeah,
Yes,
were.
they did. Yes, they did.
Yes, they absolutely fucking did. Even those, so many thousands of years ago, they knew what they were doing. Those cave drawings, cave paintings.
Of course they did.
They knew what they were painting. They were painting things that they saw.
And this brings up an interesting point. And if somebody is sitting there and they're thinking skeptically about it all, let me ask you this, and let me put this to you. Why, on every continent across our globe, and this is including places like Doggerland as well, and underwater, places we've lost over the years, over the millennia. Why, across the globe, are there civilizations that have never, ever, and never would have come into contact with each other? Why do they all depict the same things on the walls of their buildings, of their temples? Why are they all building pyramids? Why are they, essentially tipping the pyramids with precious metals and various other things? And, why are people coming down from chariots of fire from the sky in depictions within their paintings? And this is going all the way back to, Aboriginal caves. This is pre-pyramid. We're talking hunter-gatherers here. They all paint the same things. Why? These people, I don't know you. You know, you live in the Netherlands. I live in England. If you paint a picture and I paint the same picture, and you show me that picture and I show you that picture, we never spoke to each other before. Surely that's going to raise questions. I don't understand why people aren't asking these questions or who's answering them.
That would mean that we have, clearly seen the same thing.
Exactly.
Clearly seen or experienced.
Exactly. And that's
same
the point.
thing.
You cannot conjure something up from your imagination that is exactly the same as what somebody else has done thousands of miles away when you'd never come into existence with them. You'd never come into contact. How? It can't happen.
Like in our modern age, sure, two people can have the same ideas. That's why we now have things like trademark and copyright and all of that, for original ideas, for as far as those are left. But yeah, we are talking thousands of years ago. People didn't just catch a plane and a couple hours later you're on an entirely different continent. Even if they could travel, it was by boat or land bridge and would take them weeks, months, perhaps. Just because Doggerland was a thing and it formed a land bridge between the UK and the Netherlands. Yeah, people most certainly have crossed over, and stories would have been told. But it's quite a trip.
Oh yeah, but this is just a European land bridge. When you talk about Giza to,
South
Machu
America,
Picchu or something like that, we're talking an expedition back then. If you was to take that journey on, I mean, primitive boats, horses. Yeah, we're talking, but maybe years. Maybe years to get there.
Primitive boats is definitely an option. I mean, there's evidence found that as far back as the Neanderthals that they used boats, but I mean they were basically very elaborate, hollowed out trees.
Yeah, I think, one of the questions you got to ask yourself is
seaworthy, but it would take them hella long, months probably, even assuming they survived, because
exactly.
The high seas.
Exactly that. And we're not talking about a nip across the Mediterranean here or the Channel, like the great empires of the world that we know, the Roman empires, the British empires.
Not the Strait of Gibraltar.
Yeah, we're not talking
30
about
kilometers between Spain and Northern Africa.
We're talking about the entirety of the Atlantic Ocean. Now, at the time, that'd have been unfathomable. We're talking Vikings are the first people from Europe to really locate North America and Newfoundland in Canada, as we've already discussed anyway. But they were way ahead of the game. You go further back than that to the pyramid times, 3,000, 4,000 years and plus. They're way before the Vikings, and they were at the pinnacle of technology as far as boat travel was concerned. And they just about did it, and nobody else did it for hundreds of years after them, by the way. So how are you telling me that people are building the same things in South America as they are in Egypt? How? With that lack of accessibility to each other's civilization.
And often on the the same line as well. Like if you were to
there's another thing, exactly.
We know, the ley lines, if you draw circles around the earth, those are, I mean, with maps, the lines that we know, but the ley lines, they're basically our planet's veins. There are our planet's neural connections, and most of the larger, most important buildings and sites seem to have been built on places where a lot of those lines come together. So,
and let me tell you something whilst you're on that point. And this is to do with the recent discovery in the pyramids, by the way. This is a Chinese discovery. So what you just said there, you talked about the specific points on Earth where these pyramids are built and erected. It's not an accident that they've been put up there and positioned in the same way and pointing at the same things. Now, what the Chinese discovered, and this is groundbreaking, this is very recently, the same time as the underground structures. So they used their advanced layered radar system, which is what we've seen, detecting the structures underground.
Yeah.
And what they've found is, and this is from a distance of 5,000 miles away, by the way, there's plasma bubbles, also known as what they call equatorial plasma bubbles, so EPBs, and the hot pockets of gas that form at low latitudes and can interfere with GPS signals and satellite communications. Now, they found one of these bubbles over the pyramid of Giza. Why? Is that
Plasma.
a plasma bubble? Yeah, and you can, I mean, you can put it up on the screen, or you can just find it, but you can see the scan, the layered scan from Chinese authorities, and they show you it. And there's a heat map, and there's plasma bubbles above the pyramids in Giza. Now, when you talked about what you said before, the geographical positioning of these things, is that a coincidence? Or did somebody know something? Is there a science here that we don't know about today that is lost?
They knew. But the thing is, with the pyramids, like what to us are the, ancient Egyptians, the pyramids were already ancient to them. Like, the ancient Egyptians already, had forgotten or had no idea who built the pyramids. So it's fun fact that I often like to mention, just, to get an idea of the timelines. Cleopatra, the Cleopatra that we know from pop culture, who was married to the Roman general. I mean, there have been multiple Cleopatras, but, take her. In the grand scheme of things, in the grand scheme of timelines, she lived closer to the development of the iPhone than the building of the Great Pyramids.
It's incredible when you say it like that.
And it's like, when you're thinking of it, I mean, I said that to my parents a while ago, and my dad was like, no way, and he started looking it up, and he's like, oh shit, yeah. And by a few hundred years, even not just a few decades, but like a few hundred years, multiple generations have gone past already, and they forgot who built the pyramids and what for and what did they look like. The ancient Egyptians had archaeologists to do research into ancient Egypt.
It's when you say it like that, closer to the iPhone than the building of the pyramids, puts it into perspective quite well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So I've just been looking into this. Basically, I asked AI, thank God for AI as a tool, why was the plasma above the pyramids? It's interesting because the answers that it's given me, there's four really. There's speculative ideas as well, obviously, but there's four main theories that this thing's thrown at me. And this is stuff that they wouldn't have known then, and they wouldn't have had any information on. So the first one is geological anomalies. So this is an explanation for the plasma. This is what the first one. The pyramid's unique geological location, situated near the Nile River and on a plateau, might contribute to the formulation of plasma bubbles. The underlying geology could be generating unusual electromagnetic or telluric currents influencing the ionosphere above. Again, that's something that they wouldn't know when they're building that. They wouldn't have any idea of that, surely, unless there are techniques that have been lost that we don't know about.
Going by the notion that, ancient people were primitive, I mean...
I don't think so.
No, definitely not.
I don't think they've been primitive for a long, long time. That's what I mean. I mean, it's...
Because even that first answer, like, so many things have to come together in, just the right quantities at just the right time, in just the right way for that to form. I mean, I fucking suck at math, but I can do that.
Well, that's the thing. Is what we need, really, is the opinion of somebody who's a top rank engineer, a top rank mathematician, just to say is, the possibility of this. Let's talk Turkey for a second. How realistic is this? Do you know what I mean? To do this, I mean, to get those exact figures. There's ancient construction techniques is the second theory. But again, why would you know? Unless we've lost that theory, those theologies on it. So some research suggests that the pyramid's ancient construction techniques involving precise stone placement and alignment might be creating a unique, energetic signature. And this signature could be interacting with the Earth's electromagnetic field, producing plasma bubbles. That's the second theory. But that's wild as well. That's crazy.
But then still, they had to know how to place it in, that specific form, like down to the millimeter.
That's my point.
Probably, and on that specific place. And then, they, like, very first of all, had to know where those ley lines are, where those, those hot spots are.
But I'm not intelligent enough to understand this now, and we're talking about back in the day here where people, there wasn't no curriculum. Not everybody went to school. It wasn't the done thing at the time.
No.
So how did they know this information?
99% of people couldn't even read or write. That was saved for the very upper echelons, and even more the priest class. Like, it was pretty much saved for the priest class to learn to read and write. So, they were also the administrators of those times.
Well, monks took over that in Catholicism, didn't they? In Christianity as well. As the monks took on that mantle. They were the educated.
It's still, kind of the priest class, if you will, just, taking it into a broader spectrum. Yeah. They were tasked with, writing the Bible. And so, I mean, you... First of all, you have to know how to read, to interpret the texts and then translate them in other languages, and then also have to know how to write, because you're gonna have to write it down. Especially way before the printing press, everything was done by hand. But still, those were the monks. Those were the religious people. That was the priest class, a very small class of people. 1% maybe knew how to read and write. Your average citizen, your average farmer who worked on the land from sun up to sundown, why would he have to know how to read and write? Like, he can read. He can read nature. He can read the signs in the air. He can, see, basic pattern recognition, really. That's all he needs for his job. He's a farmer. Why would he, have to learn or have to know how to read and write?
Exactly. And the point that you've just made, it lends more deep thought to the topic of, if there was something, very advanced happening, but whatever the techniques were that they were using to shift, and move and maneuver these giant stones into position.
Or however they did it.
Who had the information on how to do it? How did they teach the populace of people who were building these things how to do it as well, if they couldn't read and write? And where did that information go? That's the question. Those are the questions that need answering, because we don't know how they did it now.
Where did that information come from? How did they know?
Exactly. And, it all lends to the idea that there is something has happened that is not happening. It's not happened now. It's not happening now. Or we're kept in the dark. I don't know. And this is the point. The whole point of this podcast is that the more people that talk about these things and dig into it and unearth things and bounce off ideas off each other, the more we understand the situation, the more dots we can connect. And the more we put this out there publicly, the more pressure that puts potentially on people that do know, that are concealing this information. And the louder the voice, it's only going to do good, as in, let's get this information out there. Let's see who's holding the secrets. I want to know. Yeah. This isn't it. This is the problem I've got with all of this, and this is ET's past, present, future, is that this is not for the men in suits. This is for humankind. Everybody deserves this information. They cannot dictate to us what we can or do and do not know, or will or won't want to understand. That is for us as individuals to interpret. And if you take the suit off the President of the United States body and you take the clothes off my back, we're still men. We're exactly the same. So what makes him better than me as far as custodian of that information?
He's still, gets out of bed one leg at a time.
Exactly. Still, we all deserve to know. This is information for us.
Morning, poor Melania. Imagine getting a smooch from Donald Trump. No thanks.
Or mine the other way around. But yeah.
Luckily he's rich.
Probably not living a bad life, is he really?
No, and I mean, neither is she. You know, if your husband's Donald Trump, he's filthy fucking rich, and I mean, now he's the president of the United States. So, you know, there's a good reason for her to stay with him, and you know, he's got some good arm candy.
He's doing well, but the point is that this is information for the world. It's not for a certain group, a demographic of people in suits. It isn't. So the quicker this disclosure thing can come around, I think the better. There's two ways it can go, I think, the disclosure. It's either going to be an incredible thing, and the whole trajectory of the journey that we're on as a species changes for the better. And potentially, it could, turn the page on a big way. This isn't a small progression. We could go essentially from where we are now to interstellar beings, really, within a very short period of time.
Beings on the Kardashev scale.
Or it goes horribly wrong and we end up gone, extinct essentially through some kind of nuclear war or some cataclysmic event that we've caused. That's, I say, the two ways it goes. And it's quite scary when you think about it. And I try not to too much. Yeah. I just hope that it goes the right way. And the people who've got the most to lose, the greed, the elite class that have been concealing this and monopolizing it essentially, they're going to go down swinging, and whatever way that is not going to be pretty. Yeah, but it's got to happen. That's the only way it happens. Somebody's got to be held to account for keeping this information from us, and when it does come out, I say they'll go down swinging in a big way. Yeah,
I mean, there is this this quote which has been attributed to a couple of people. It is very much paraphrasing, but it still stands. What is that? Just I do not know with what weapons World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones.
Makes sense, and you're right.
If we're going down the horrible way, if you will, that will be our reality. That will, be the reset back to the Stone Age.
Yeah,
really.
Just touching on it. I mean, again, I think we've been going on for a while, and I think maybe there is another podcast in this talking about modern times, because we've done exactly the opposite of what we said we were going to do. We started right back at the very beginning, and we sort of patrolled through from there. So maybe next time we can talk about the modern stuff. But there
is so much to talk about.
Oh my God!
There are so many rabbit holes that you can connect to it. Free energy, or there are whole things we can say about that.
But it all deserves to be spoken about.
Philosophical societies and their idea of aliens or interdimensionals. That's there are multiple podcasts.
Absolutely, and the point
dedicated to just that.
And I would say that to the viewers as well, by the way, is if you've come on here and you might, this hasn't potentially floated your boat. Let me tell you now that this topic is so big and takes so much unpacking. And as you've just said there, quite rightly, you could spend an entire day on just free energy, on just certain things within this. To unpack it all, this is going to take time. It is. And it might be slapdash. And there's a reason for that. This isn't structured. What we're saying, or the information that we're giving you, isn't findable. It's not in archives. It's not in a way that's structured in which we can regurgitate that information to you. It isn't. So we are having to unpack this thing ourselves and try and give you that information systematically that doesn't blow your mind, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think we're trying, and there's a lot of people in the world trying to do it. There's a lot of song sheets that people seem to be singing off that are different from one another. But again, it's all about connecting the dots. And what I would say to anybody listening and watching this is, don't judge one podcast or don't judge one person's information. Take the information, put it away somewhere, and then find some more information and connect the dots. Find the bits that are relevant and start piecing together the big puzzle. You can see it yourself, and it doesn't take long for it to start emerging, this picture. And the more you see of it, the more you connect. And that's what we're going to do on this podcast. We're going to unpack this thing systematically over time you know, and it'll be fun, be enjoyable. I think I'll put the meat in the bones.
Years, probably. Like there is so much that we can talk about.
Absolutely,
I mean,
absolutely. And you know, we've got the option for guests as well. We can get subject matter experts on this.
Yeah,
easy.
Yeah, I mean, I have on my own show, I have a whole freaking range of guests that I could, you know, possibly contact. Even on this very topic, I
absolutely
know who to contact about this. It was a strange show.
I've got some people in my head.
That I did with her. I still don't know what to think of it or what to make of it, but you know, it's right up you know, our alley of, you know, at least this episode. And you know, even if you take just one thing of what we just mentioned, you know, out of what, like hundreds of things that we mentioned, you know, just take one thing of it, go from there, you know. And we're not asking you to believe us, you know. This is years and years and years of like our own experience of, you know, finding different sources, you know, reading different books and articles and magazines, watching different movies, watching different people tell stories, or, you know, tell the same story but in very different ways with other details. Or, you know, there's a quote that I like to use, especially on you know, on my own show and shows that are more spiritual, pagan aligned. The only thing I know is that I know nothing. And I believe that's Socrates or Plato, one of those. And it's true. I don't know anything, you know. I know, I mean, if it's 1% of 1%, then that is already a hell of a lot.
Oh yeah.
And I'm 33 years old. I'm learning every damn day, and I'm unlearning every day.
Oh yeah.
You know,
and that's the key. The unlearning.
So many times, like so many times, ideas that I had, notions that I had about things, I'll talk to someone else who has a, you know, a different point of view on those things, and I'm like, oh.
Sometimes that's quite saddening, though, right? I've found a few of my thoughts on certain topics that have been thrown clear out the window, and I found it quite upsetting, because I thought, it sounds so great, you know. It sounds like I'm onto something, and then you hear something, and, well, that shoots that out the sky. And it can be upsetting. But, you know, one thing I will say is, on a reassurance level for the people that are watching on, is that it's okay to find this stuff unbelievable. It's fine to think that's unbelievable, because it is unbelievable. Yeah. And that's all right. So if you are watching, you think, oh my God, it can't be. That we've all been there. We've all been there. It's crazy. Absolutely. It's crazy. Just to say some of the things out aloud, what we talk about, it's nuts. You know, you'd have thrown us in a padded room a few years ago for that. Yeah, but there's more. There's so much evidence, and I don't think people understand that this isn't just nonsense. We're just spouting into the ether. There is so much evidence for this stuff. We just have to know where to look, and you know what it says, and interpret the information the way that it needs to be interpreted. But this is a very, and I'll end my piece by ending it the way that I began. Is that this is very real. This is very, very real, this topic, this subject. And it needs speaking about, and it needs people to be open-minded. We've lost something over the decades as a race, as a species. We've become so skeptical about everything. And, you know, a lot of that's down to the establishment, the lies that have been told, the deceit that we've all had to live through. You just don't know who to believe anymore. But the one thing that you can believe in is people. Elected officials and government officials and unelected officials, you don't know. With agendas and narratives, you don't know. But what you can believe in is people. There are people on Earth who are good people who just genuinely want to share information and just want to know what's going on. And you can believe in us. You can believe in each other. You know, just listen and learn. And that thirst for knowledge, I think, is a human thing. You know, I'm very thirsty for knowledge recently. I don't know whether it's just because I'm getting older. I'm pushing on into my 30s now, at the back end of the 30s, by the way. But my thirst for knowledge in recent years has just grown exponentially. I have to learn. I have to know things. And that's stuff that I've never done before in my life, really. So I just plowed through it, you know, done the best I can. But recently, I have to learn. I just have to know things, you know. I can never stop learning now. And it's a great thing. It's liberated me almost.
And the scary thing is, the more you find out, certain things, the more you find out how much you don't know.
And
Think,
yeah,
You
right.
think you know something, and then you kind of go on about it. You go a little bit deeper into it, and you're like, I don't know anything
Mm-hmm.
about this. I thought I knew, but my whole world is shattered.
But while that can be a scary thing, for me, I've been through the fear, I've been through that fear, the reality of the situation where we are insignificant, essentially, as beings. And that is quite scary. But in the same breath, we're so special and we're so unique and we're far from fragile. But, in another sense of the word, we're incredibly fragile. Yeah, but we're an incredible species. And
We are very complicated beings.
oh yeah, for sure. And if somebody has designed us, there is some kind of design at play, and as we mentioned earlier, genetic manipulation. It's a beautiful accident what's happened, because there's nobody that could have predicted that, essentially big bags of meat walking around on the planet, digging things up for another species, and suddenly here we are.
And then
We're an incredible species. We really are. And we don't give ourselves enough credit for it. And the way that we're living in the world right now is not the way that we were supposed to be living. And I think, and as we move through and unpack some of this stuff, I think that's why a lot of ETs are here, because they recognize that as well. There is a level of intelligence where you move beyond, the feelings that we feel on a day-to-day basis. There is an evolution beyond that where you are essentially just a being working in complete symbiosis with the universe. You're not fighting it. You're not resisting. You are being. You're part of it. You just, you're part of the universe. You just, and we're not. We seem to be this just crazy species that fight tooth and nail against everything, resist everything. We destroy our planet. We just, at every turn, we just seem to be just chaos. But we don't need to be living that way. It's the establishment and the way that it's been forced upon us, civilization. It bothers me when I hear things like, we could go to Mars tomorrow, but we can't afford it. Says who? We're all on the same rock. We've all got the same resources. If you take away currency and government tomorrow and just say, well, let's build that, and there's nothing stopping us except ourselves. It's we're our biggest barrier. It's not the atmosphere, it's not the next universe, it's not speed and distance between star systems, it's us, we're the barrier. And the moment, what we need to do as a race is get this information out there, learn, get disclosure gone, and really just take a step as a race.
Get together. Like that's what I spoke about in the solo episode that I did for Across the Pond, which is uploaded, and you can find it in the episode list. I spoke about the divide between human beings and like how ancient that is, but also we have so much in common, and there is strength in numbers. So instead of just thinking about me, let's start to think about others again. We were very, very good at that at some point, and we still are. I am a pagan. I see a lot of pagan communities. I see a lot of religious communities who really take care of each other, but it doesn't have to come from religion. It has to just come from a good place.
That's it. And I think inherently as a species, we are a good species.
Yeah.
We've got the need in us and the want, usually, 99% of the time, to do the right thing and do a good thing instinctively. Because, we've got these lovely things called hormones, and endorphins are released when we do good for other people. And that's the way we're set up, to help and do good for one another. That's why our body rewards us by releasing those hormones when we do good things.
Yeah.
And for some reason, it's been hammered into us through establishment after establishment that we're all scrabbling as individuals up the wall to get, to get something, whatever that be, whether it be wealth.
It's the craps in the bucket. As soon as one, looks like it's gonna make it out, the rest of us just pulls it back. It's like, the fuck you are. If we're not, you're not.
But I do think things are changing. from some, I've mentioned it throughout the video
And
a couple
rapidly
of times.
too.
Yeah, very quick, by the way. There is a shift, I believe, happening, and a major shift. The weird thing is, there's been world wars, carnage, chaos, millions dead, but I don't think anything's really had the impact on the way that the world is moving now, as it is now. Do you know what I mean? The world's changing crazily fast, and there's no world war. Yeah, there's conflict, but there's no world war that's pushing the change like in recent times.
No physical, bums and guns.
Exactly, the
war.
traditional sense of the word. It's
Yeah.
almost like a spiritual evolution happening across the world, I suppose.
Yeah.
People just don't want to be led by establishments anymore. People in suits. I think it's almost like an anti-authoritarian type evolution that's happening. I think we're looking for idols and inspiration as opposed to leaders, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? People that lead from the front and do good things seem to be what we're interested in, as opposed to somebody with a list of credentials as long as my arm. I don't think anybody cares
Yeah.
about that. We take people more based on their actions as opposed to words nowadays. I think we're moving in a very good direction, scary direction, because there seems to be a lot of resistance.
I mean, it's kind of like a video game, right?
It is.
It is. If the scary music starts playing, and there
Is
are
it playing
enemies up
now?
ahead, you're going into the right direction. You just got to go through it. At a certain point, the scary music will stop.
Mm-hmm.
Lovely music is gonna play again, and you've progressed to the next level or the next stage, and you're that much closer to the end goal. Game theory, you can apply to a lot of things, and you can apply it to life. You just got to get through the rough bits, and we're in a
interesting transitional period for sure. But I think I've said it before. I think by the end of 2027, the full disclosure. I know we've said it's already been disclosed. I know, but on an official scale, I mean, I'm not talking about a whistleblower. I'm talking about a dignitary, somebody within authority. Taking that and officially stating it that they are here and they've been here a long time, and whatever else. I think whatever that level of disclosure be, it might be a soft disclosure with the pyramids, as I mentioned, or it might be somebody behind the lectern just telling us. But I feel like more questions will come from that, so I doubt it.
Let's
Who
do that
knows?
for episode 2, kind of philosophizing, if you will, on how that disclosure would look like. I think that's a fun brain.
Yeah, definitely. Especially because you can
for
build a
the second
case.
one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a good topic to discuss for the next one for sure. It's already happening now. I think with this drone situation. But again, we'll talk about this. I don't want to get too hung up, but it's been a good episode. I think we've really unpacked a lot of stuff from the old days, and I hope we've set the scene for anybody who is watching. Maybe aroused a little bit suspicion.
Yeah, suspicion, interest. Just as long as we made you feel something.
That's
then
right. Yeah,
we have accomplished our goal.
That's it. I mean, we're not talking about turning people into avid believers here and now, but this is a progressive journey. It's curiosity, and that's another beautiful trait of human beings.
We're just pointing out things. We're just
Exactly.
speaking from experience, telling you about the things that we have discovered, about the things that we have read, that we have seen, that we have heard, that we have felt, that we have sensed. Whether you believe us or not,
That's up to you.
That is up to you.
That is
we
up
can
to you.
we can make you believe as long as we as long as we make you think.
Yeah.
As long as we make you feel.
And I said it to Andy the other day. Andy, by the way, the other guy who's supposed to be on here. I hope he's been recovered, by the way. If he is, when he does watch this, I hope he's not still sat at the side of the road in his car. But as we said, the other day, there's going to be two kinds of people when this information is released officially. There's going to be the people who knew about it, and there's going to be the people who know about it, who had no idea, are oblivious, ignorant, essentially, and their world will be blown apart. So you've got to make a decision now when you're listening to things like this and other people's podcasts. You make that decision, because when it comes out, and it will, and it is coming out, and there's no what you can do about that to stop it, disclosure's coming. Where are you going to be positioned? You're either going to be one of the people who has knowledge and other people will come to for guidance, or you're going to be one of those scrambling up the wall, trying to get information, panicking. I know which one I'm going to be. I know which one you're certainly going to be. And Andy as well, when he gets back on. I know which one he's going to be. But that's a decision you've got to make. And as you quite rightly pointed out, all we're doing is showing you the information and do with it what you will.
Yes. And with all that said, we thank you all very much for joining us on this this rather interesting episode of Across the Pond. I have to get used to saying Across the Pond. Like, I'm so used to calling out my own show. But yeah, this has been great. This has been good. This has been a good talk, man. For
Definitely.
For the first show, hour and a half.
Not bad.
I mean, still got to do some basic editing, of course. So yeah, if you liked any of what you heard, first of all, please take it, run with it, go, and make sure to follow us. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure to leave a 5-star rating. Make sure you are subscribed. Subscribe to Across the Pond on all the socials. I kind of still have to hear from Andy what socials those are exactly. I know at least we're on TikTok, and
we will be on
Facebook.
YouTube as well.
Yeah, eventually we will be on YouTube as well. It is the audio platforms now, predominantly, and Facebook and TikTok and probably a couple other places. But
everywhere. We're going to be everywhere.
We will be everywhere. We will make sure that we are everywhere. And, until we are, please help us make sure that we are by also sharing this episode, sharing the podcast with everyone, not just with the people you think will like it. Everyone needs to hear this.
Everybody needs to know.
This is information that, a lot of it is publicly known, is publicly available for everyone. So let's make this for everyone. And let's help everyone. So thank you all. We will see you next time. This has been Stein Fox and Liam, 2 co-hosts of Across the Pond. And we will see you all. We will speak to you all next time. Bye-bye.